go. Richard, welcome back to segment 2 this morning. And let me just get back to my cheat sheet here, which I have. Now, in segment 2, we're going to be talking about the memory clip of the week. Now, do I have that right? Is that 3466?
That's correct.
All right, and why don't you give us just a little rundown on what's on that clip, and then the analysis of the negotiations with Iran.
Memory clip 3466 from about a week or so ago. As we all know, the Muslim Brotherhood candidate won the Egyptian elections over the weekend. About a week before that, a Egyptian cleric was campaigning on his behalf and giving a speech to the Shura Council, which is the upper house of the Egyptian parliament. The lower house is called the People's Assembly. And he was campaigning on behalf of the Muslim Brotherhood candidate who won. And he assured the listeners of a number of things that the candidate had told him. Number one is that he assured the listeners that the Muslim Brotherhood candidate told him that he is indeed a dedicated Salafi, which is an extremist ideology of Islam. Number two, he assured him that he will stand up to the United States. He is not afraid of the United States. And number three, he assured his listeners that the Muslim Brotherhood candidate told him that he believes the Shia are more dangerous to Islam than the Jews are. So I have to say, Joe, if Shia are more dangerous than we are, they're very dangerous.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that entirely, Rich. What more can I say about this? I mean, all of these groups are incredibly dangerous groups. All right, and you just pointed out to one there, which is interesting. Now, what about the negotiations with Iran? What's negotiations?
Yes. We had
what are we negotiating? The price of apples here?
We had the third round of negotiations with Iran. It was held first in Istanbul, then Baghdad, then Moscow. They were 2 or 3 days each. What are we negotiating about? Well, the West insists that Iran stop enrichment or have no more enrichment beyond 5% and hand over whatever they have beyond 5%, meaning up to 20%. And third negotiations failed. Now, first let's keep in mind, let me just make mention that the White House issued a statement congratulating the Egyptian people for their milestone on their transition to democracy because of the new election. I think milestone, by the way, is not use of the word milestone is not a coincidence, because milestone is the English translation of a book written by Said Qutb, who was a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in the 50s and 60s. But getting back to Iran, why are the negotiations failing? Well, first of all, let's look at some of the background. Let's not forget, on April 9th, the White House spokesman said that the United States is committed to preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. And as we spoke about at the time, he said in his statement at the daily press briefing, the crux of the problem is, regardless of what they may say about their intentions, quote, no one on the international stage has any faith in those assurances. Now, that's strong language. What he's saying in plain English is we don't believe them, and that we have to take concrete steps to make sure that Iran shows their good faith. In the letter of the 44 senators sent to the president Friday before the Moscow talks began on Monday, among the things that the senators wrote were that we have to see Iran take concrete steps. I'm sure they used that language because that was in the language of the White House spokesman. Concrete steps to show good faith. And if this round of talks fail in Moscow, which they did, we have to reevaluate other options because they maintain that the talks are just a stalling technique. Now, on June 20th, the House Armed Services Committee held a hearing entitled Addressing the Iranian Nuclear Challenge, Understanding the Military Options. So we see that there is activity or concern that on the part of Americans here, that or American officials here, that these negotiations won't produce anything. What is the problem, the essence of the problem? The essence of the problem is nobody believes the Iranian regime, because the Iranian regime believes itself to be a world leader. We've discussed that. The Supreme Leader's statement about being the leader of the anti-hegemonistic movement. There are more oppressed nations, as in his view, than major powers. But so he considers himself to be the leader of the movement. In February, he stated that if there's a war with the United States will be harmed more than Iran will. In March, he said that Iran won't surrender to Western sanctions. In May, he made the anti-hegemonistic statement. Problem is that people don't believe what they're saying. And if you look at the Iranian constitution, and if you just Google the two words Iran and constitution, I wrote an article on this, it'll come up in the top 10. The Iranian constitution says, in the closing sentence of its preamble, that it looks forward, Iran looks forward to the downfall of all other governments by the end of the century, which hasn't happened, and the establishment of a one holy empire, and of course under their leadership. So when they complain about countries talking about regime change, they basically declare that their intention is regime change of the whole world. The Iranian constitution talks about spreading its revolution at home and abroad, and it talks about there being the guardians of the oppressed people, and it's their call, and the implementation of international justice is their responsibility, and of course they decide what justice is. So they view themselves as a leader on par with any other major leader or superpower, and have shown no signs of good faith. And it will be difficult for Iran, if perhaps impossible, to stand down based on knowing that no one trusts them, which is the core of the issue, or the crux of the issue, as the White House spokesman said. So that's what we have. Iran argues, of course, that according to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, what they're doing is legal. May or may not be true, but that the NPT is not the only consideration that decision makers make. It's also how Iran behaves at the same time that they're enriching uranium. And if Iran indeed is, as it seems to be, trying to acquire nuclear weapons capability, and the West doesn't believe what they say, we will have a standoff, and who knows where that will lead to.
Yeah, Rich, I got to be honest with you. I'm not pressing you on this because I know you're not behind this, but if you look at this from a cynical point of view, this doesn't look very productive at all. This looks like we've been down the same road over and over and over again, and that these guys are just, I hate to use a vernacular like this, but really jerking our chain. All right, and that's straight from the New York streets, and I think a lot of people in New York are looking at it the same way. They're saying, "Hey, what's going on?" All right, this should have been stopped long, long, long ago. All right, everybody, that's Richard Horowitz. All right, and Rich, you did a great job. It's just the news you're reporting on really stinks.
Well, I'm trying to do the best I can.
Well, no, I mean, it's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's not like you're creating it. This is world affairs today, and it really, really, really stinks.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see another war. Nobody wants to see all this nonsense, serious stuff going on. They'd rather have people out in the fields farming and growing food and plants and feeding people and having wonderful family lives. Not all this other nonsense that it's just. It's really ruling the day on the international scene, and it's sad.
Yeah, and the problem there is that Iran will say the same thing you're saying about its own behavior. It just has to accomplish a few things in the process, like make sure it dominates the rest of the world. Then everybody can go farming. How do we solve that?
Yeah, well, yeah. You'd think we were talking to somebody from planet Mars. They're right here on good old Earth with us, and they're our neighbors in many instances. All right, so I'm with you, Rich. I'm with you. Thanks. All right, everybody, that was Richard Horowitz, and you